everybody has a hero. Growing up, used to every Sunday we used to sit down and Dad would put on the game. We'd watch the Lions, and I remember, because I played football then too, and my hero was Chris Spielman. And that guy, he was not the biggest linebacker in the world by any means. But he played with so much heart, and I wanted to be like him when I played, and he may be tackling the wrong guy, but if he thought you had the ball, he was going to tackle you. And now, if you look at the history on the Lions there, the gridiron greats, they call them, Chris Spielman actually ended up with most tackles in his career with the Lions out of anybody, at least today. And I love that. And the guy played with so much heart. And I remember this one time he intercepted a pass and ended up running it in for a touchdown. And the camera focused in on him, and this was his first touchdown, and so he's really excited and everything. And he goes up through the end zone and he sees a little kid up there and he just flips the ball to the kid. And I'm like, man, that's the kind of guy I want to be when I grow up. Because he didn't gloat and everything. I mean, yeah, he was proud, but he didn't gloat. He didn't rub it in everyone's face. He took his high fives. He did the, yeah, we got it, Then he took the time to think about somebody else. Even in an adrenaline-filled sport like football. And so he was my hero. He was good at the game, but he still took the time for others. We tend to have heroes in our faith as well. I frequently think about David and Paul. And I try to imagine what was it like when David faced off with Goliath. I mean, he was a teenager. He was a kid. He was the youngest in his entire family, the smallest. And he goes out there. He was bringing some food to his brothers who were in the army. And he just happens to hear Goliath taunting them. And he goes down there. He's like, I'll face him. Y'all won't. Okay, whatever. But I'm going to. And I always thought, man, to have faith like that, I mean, he goes down there and I just imagine you've got the army on either side of you, and, you got the folks against you, they're shouting at you and taunting you, and you got this giant out there, Goliath, and he's their greatest warrior, and you're just there, and you're going to face him on your own with a sling and some stones. To have that kind of faith when your entire army that's behind you is scared and not willing to go forward and do it. What would that be like? And I've prayed many times, I'm just asking God for faith like that. Or Paul, New Testament, Book of Acts, he goes and he's witnessing to some different towns on one of his missionary journeys, and they end up chasing him out of town. So he goes to the next one. They chase him out of that town. So he goes to the next one. And finally, eventually, he's preaching, and they all drag him away outside the city, and they stone him. What happens? Well, he passes out and everything. They thought he was dead. He wakes up, walks right back in, and finishes what he was saying. To have that kind of faith is just incredible. In both of them, they've had those major victories like that, but then they've also had those times where you wonder what's going on. David wrote Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for Thou art with me. And even though everything is against him, he looks to God and he's like, you know what, God, I'm overwhelmed, but I know that you have this under control, and I know it's in your hands, and that's okay. So I'm going to trust that it's okay, because I know you've got it. Or Paul when he's in jail, uh, he gives praise to God, and to have that kind of faith and to be that kind of a person. And then I look at my life and I'm like, man, what am I doing? If only I were like them. If only I had that makeup where I could be like that. And I bring all this up because last week I was at a men's group. We were finishing up a study on James. And in James chapter 5, verse 17, I love this. And I got to give credit to Francis Chan because the study we were doing was written by Francis Chan. And the way that he described it, I really recommend you look it up. But the way that he described it really made me think about it differently. But verse 17 just hit me on that. It says, Elijah was a man just like us. He prayed earnestly that it would not rain, and it did not rain on the land for 3.5 years. And we continue in verse 18. Again he prayed, and the heavens gave rain, and the earth produced its crops. Think about that. It's so loaded. First of all, Elijah was a man just like us. Elijah is one of the heroes, in the Old Testament. And you could kind of extrapolate that. David was a man just like us. Paul was a man just like us. The concept is we're all created in the image of God. God has given each of us the ability to have that kind of faith. And it's up to us if we're going to choose to pursue that or not. But then, it's fascinating. The example that James uses here, he prayed earnestly that it would not rain, and it did not rain on the land for 3.5 years. So the whole thing was, Elijah was witnessing and everything, and there's so many stories about him. But the antagonist was prophets of Baal. And, they served this idol Baal, and at different points they had these showdowns. And I think of one of them. He's got this showdown with the prophets of Baal, and he's like, all right, let's settle this. You guys build an altar to Baal, and then do burnt offerings and whatever, and then I'm going to do the same thing to my God, and we'll see. We'll see which God burns the offerings. So, the prophets of Baal, they built their altar, they put everything on it and whatever, and they're praying, and nothing happened. So Elijah's like, all right, I got this. He builds his altar to God, puts the sacrifice on it, and he's like, all right, cover it in water. And they're like, all right. So they pour water on it. No, it's not enough. Cover it in water. Add some more. They keep adding more and more water. And he's like, all right. And then he gets down and he prays. And God sends fire down and burns it up. I mean, that was the type of guy that Elijah was. And James here is saying, he's just like us. We're just like him. We have that ability to have that kind of faith. We have, if we put our faith in God, if we pursue God with all of our hearts, He'll do great things through us, just like He did through Elijah, just like He did through David, just like He did through Paul, or Ruth, or anyone. If we would just pursue God, you'll see Him working in you. And, I think about that, and I was spending a bit of time thinking about it, and then I thought about a different men's group that I go to. And this past week when we met, it was a hard one. It's one of the guys that used to attend the group. He just passed away. And we were meeting, it was Wednesday morning, and we're at a restaurant, and we're talking and everything, and Wednesday was the day of the funeral. So now I didn't know this guy very well. Actually, I didn't know him at all, but I feel like I did a little bit through all the stories. But all the other guys at the group knew this guy so well, and the guy that leads the group especially. When he got there and he started the group that day, he was in tears. He was in tears, just overwhelmed by what had happened. And it was one of those times, and I didn't see it at the time, but kind of looking back, I can see it now. It's one of those times where you just know that people are watching and they're taking note of how you react. I'm sure others may have heard our conversation, whatever, but I mean, in a restaurant at 7 in the morning, and you start off with just a bunch of guys together, and some of them are crying, other people are going to take notice. We weren't focused on that. The group wasn't focused on that, but I'm sure the other folks would take notice. And that meeting easily could have been really, really negative. It could have been just awful. Just like when David went after Goliath. He could have not gone down there, and that story wouldn't have happened. And instead, we would have a very different history there. But God worked in David's heart and had him go and face Goliath, and God delivered. See, God did that so that He could show David and his people that He'll come through. And Wednesday, when we were at the group, it had that tone. It could have gone horrible. But God showed up at the table. I mean, it wasn't, we couldn't see Him, but you could see Him working in people. And through the conversation, through the stories shared, and the tears shed, we had a group of 9 guys. We had one empty seat. So fitting. But a group of 9 guys in the middle of a restaurant, and we had communion. And we're sharing stories and stuff about the gentleman that passed, and encouraging each other, and just being there together, and letting God work in our hearts. And it was surreal. It was amazing. Because at the end of that meeting, the wildest thing happened. A group of 9 grown men in a restaurant, mourning the passing of a brother, and we started singing. It is well with my soul. And to me, that just really spoke to, we are just like Elijah. We're just people. There's nothing special about him. There's nothing special about us. We're just people. But the difference is when we surrender and we put down, we put to death our fleshly desire. Because in that moment, we didn't want to be randomly singing in a restaurant, we wanted to question, we wanted to blame somebody for this guy's death. He was young, and we thought he was going to get better, and it naturally your sinful nature, your human nature wants to blame somebody for it when that happens. But we put that aside, and we let God work in us and through us. And at the end, we were smiling and singing and giving praise to God, just like David did in the Psalms. And it was just an incredible thing. And the reason I share that, again, is just to let you know that when you read this book, and you look at the stories and you think, man, if only I could be like that, then I would do all these things and God would work in me and all that. And I'm just telling you, friend, there's nothing special about these people. They just let God work through them. All of the special things that happened was not because of these people, but it was because of our God. And He chooses, I don't know why, but He chooses to work through us. He gives us that privilege if we just would surrender to Him and allow Him to work through us. So think about that. The next time you're reading, and the next time you think, man, if only I could be like that. Because you are like that. God created you in His image. And He can do things that just boggle the mind and don't make sense. He can bring you joy and singing in the midst of loss.